The issue. The issue is that there's a projected 9 billion people going to be here in 2050, and we're not really necessarily sure how to feed them. There is an obvious distribution issue with a billion people being overweight and a billion people being malnourished in the world. But the issue that I'm going to talk about today is going to be an agricultural one. So there's obviously two sides to this. There's the industrial side, which is sort of monoculture, meaning just like one plant, like corn is as far as the eye can see, and then also like a permaculture, and then which has a variety of different distributions of fruits and vegetables that form a way that reduce insecticides and herbicides used in current agricultural processes. So one of the reasons why we have our current system is because it's the most efficient in the respect that it's made to produce the most amount of food possible. Now, it's important to note that there's a difference between the efficiency I'm talking about and the efficiency that many others are talking about. Permaculture and the other alternative organic or agricultural processes, they could be utilizing less water and other resources, not to mention polluting less. But the fact is that many of these active groups that are voicing for these agricultural practices are putting much of their free time into these systems, and these areas require a lot of volunteer work, and you're not necessarily going to get a lot of volunteers if you're a huge farm. If a typical corn farm now were to try to go organic, try and fill 500 people with, try and get 500 people to come to work on your farm for free, because that's what we're going to face, is that the harvesting respect is a lot easier with a monoculture. You can just simply get a corn harvester and mechanize that, but if you have a variety of fruits and vegetables, you're not going to be able to take a machine to that. It becomes much more complicated, and it has to be done by hand. And although by hand may be more efficient in respect of preserving the amount of food that doesn't get bruised or battered, and because you can easily grab a tomato from the vine without hurting the crop, and you can take that, gently put it in a basket, whereas the mechanized form has been found ways to reduce the amount of waste and damage to things like that are as gentle as tomatoes, but they still produce waste, and it's definitely an issue. But because our system utilizes is mechanized, it doesn't require the labor force that other practices do, and that's namely the reason why we currently have it, is because if we were to try and hire all these individuals onto a farm, then you're dividing up the profits from the harvest every time you add an individual. And as we all know, corn gets subsidized, and corn's not even profitable. So it becomes a lot more difficult to actually make these other foods, profitable in the correct sense, especially on a global scale. Some of it's just like the limited, demand comparable to conventional crops. That's if there was a higher demand for organic foods, then it would be cheaper. But the other issue is that organic or alternative forms take a much more involved approach as far as the environment's concerned. They change the soil over, and they're really focused on a sustainable agricultural system, whereas industrialized just produces as much as it can, and there's runoff of fertilizer and things happen, but you look at it and you're actually producing a lot more food for a lot lower cost, and then that's generally seen as the bottom line. So the other issue that we're going to face here is the cost of production. So cost of production, because of manual labor for alternative, is going to be higher, but on the environment it's going to be less hurtful, whereas the industrialized is going to be more hurtful to the environment but cheaper globally, despite the added efficiencies of alternative processes or alternative growing practices. So the final question I leave with you guys here, or the question I leave with you guys here is, how much are we even supposed to spend on food? Is it okay to try and hire more individuals and pay $25 or 25% of our income on food? 50% of our income on food? I mean, go right now to a restaurant and tell me if you think $14 is too much money. Try spending even double that. Can you afford to do that? Is that something that's feasible? I mean, if it is, if you guys really think it is, then we should definitely go for it. But you have to really question those sort of practices, and that's what we're going to be looking at in the future, is how can we meld this sort of idea of efficiency with organic alternative growing practices, and not hurt the label of organic. And that's what's going to be really scary, is that that's really when it's going to be the best, is when we actually can have a perfect meld. So I hope you've enjoyed my video, and subscribe, I guess.